My first guest today was the first Indian woman to graduate from Harvard Business School in the 70s. She was also the first woman that Price Waterhouse hired in India. And after a 30-year career in banking, today she's the group country head of HSBC. Naina Lal Kidwai spent some time with us sharing her personal story and her advice for working women in the country. When did you pick a career in finance?
Quite early. I would say it would have been towards the end of my school period, where I was pretty clear that I would be doing college in India, and the choice of economics was almost a given. I didn't really look beyond economics for a subject to study in college. And even as I was going into college, the discussions with my father were about a career in banking and finance, and that's what led me there.
But even back then, finance was not a place where women would work, because when you joined Price Waterhouse back then, you were the first woman they hired in India. So you did face a couple of walls when you were breaking them down for us.
We knew there would be, as in when I say we, my father had sort of joined hands with me at that stage, and he let me go and interview with accounting firms, and I obviously interviewed with more than one, and I faced the same sort of brick wall of, well, you know, we don't hire women. So finally, with a little help, I actually, at Price Waterhouse, managed to make enough of a noise around, well, isn't it time? You try. But what Price Waterhouse did, which was great, was they hired three of us, three women. They figured, you know, that was, and so we, at least on those audits, like we went out to Shikohabad, which you may not even know was in the sort of dacoit belts of India. So I went on those audits. We spent 2 months at the factory there, working, auditing, but we went as two women, or two girls at the time. So they did the right thing of actually balancing it at the front.
So in a series of firsts after that, you were the first woman to graduate from Harvard Business School.
Yeah.
So tell us what that was like. When you were applying back then, were there people who turned around and said, Indian women don't do this? Or when you got there, was it difficult to adjust since you were the first Indian woman who was there? Tell us what that was like.
Oh, I mean, a lot of people have, you mean to say your parents are letting you go? My mother was having kittens. I mean, there was no way she was happy about this, you know. 23-year-old, and that was 22 at the time. She was not happy that I was pushing off there. I mean, she says, yeah, I can understand, and, you know, Harvard sounds like a big name, but it's really far, and how you're going to cope, and it's not the dumb thing, and actually you should be getting married. so all of that. So there were, but to be fair, she never pressured me otherwise. It was more comment and concern and her sort of way of looking at things. But Dad, of course, was a huge supporter, and so was Mom. But it was absolutely a great experience. I was in the US for the first time in my life. I'd never visited before in order to study. I didn't know what an ATM was, because ATMs hadn't come to India. I had to learn how to shop in a supermarket, because I'd never seen a supermarket before, let alone shop in one. So the learnings were huge. And the friends of mine who took me to that supermarket trip remember it to this day. They were Americans, as you can imagine, and they laugh about it to this day. They could not get over my face that I would have to choose between 18 varieties of ketchup or 20 varieties of jams, and not be able to decide. But
while you were in school and college in India, you topped your class, you were college president, you were school captain.
My gosh, you've done your research.
There was sports, there was debate, there was theatre. Even you know, in Harvard, you were with the Dean's Committee for a while as well. How much did that add to make you who you are today? How important is extracurricular activity?
Very important. Very important. I think it's critical to develop one's abilities to hold one's own in whatever field one's in. And in order to do that, it's just not good enough to be good at your studies, because what you then end up being is a nerd. You could be someone who sits behind a computer and does great models and modeling of, you know, statistical modeling, but do you have the personality and the ability to stand up and communicate and present? And that comes a lot easier if you've been in debating or dramatics or areas where you've learned to conquer your fears. Although seeing young kids today, you wouldn't think they were scared of anything. But you know, I think it was almost to the middle of my career that I would still get butterflies in my stomach standing, you know, before an audience or even doing an important presentation. And I would have to remind myself, hey, you've done this before, you've done it in far more trying circumstances, so you can do it. So that confidence comes by knowing you have done it and you can do it, because you draw on that.
And I want to ask you a slightly personal question. Back then when you started working, and you also started a family, how did you juggle the family, the job, the travel that came with it, the long hours? This was before laptops and you know, internet and Blackberries.
I envy everyone today. It was never easy. But I was so sure that I wanted the job and the work I was doing because I loved it. And I was equally certain I wanted the family and my child and husband and everything that went with it. That you just had to find the solution. So you learn to keep both the balls in the air. You know, if you look at them as two crystal balls you don't want to let drop. They're both precious to you. And you just learn to juggle them because you have to. And you make very tough decisions. Decisions when you're away from very important family events, birthdays, but I mean my birthday was never important to me, but the birthday of your daughter or your husband or an anniversary, and you have to spend some of those away because you're on a critical deal. And equally there are events that are very important for you know, that birthday that you don't want to miss because you know that it's not going to, you know, it's something you're not going to be able to live down for a lifetime. And you learn to then say no to that particular job if you can and move to that. So you take those choices as they come. And there are many, many little decisions like this you make along the way. Sometimes you make the wrong ones. And I mean, to this day, my husband hasn't forgiven me that my first wedding anniversary was spent away from him. And I just figured he'll understand. But he hasn't understood that to date. So you make the wrong decisions. But you learn to have to then make up for it.
If there was one piece of advice that you could share with all of the women watching right now who are attempting to get this right, what would it be?
Well, choose your husband well. That's most important. Choose the work that makes you happy. Because if you're happy doing what you are, you're not going to give it up.
The other thing I want to ask you about is managing money. Now, someone who manages so much money.
When you were going to come to this.
So much money at the workplace. We have still a prejudice within our own minds as women that we shouldn't be making these decisions, or they're too difficult for us, or it's too difficult to understand. We leave it to our fathers, we leave it to our husbands. How important is it, as women who earn our own money today, that we come out and we take control of it and we start making our own decisions?
I have an admission to make. My husband does all my investment stuff, right? But we do discuss it. I obviously do have input into it, and he does it because he's just far better at it and he sees it through. I tend to just forget in the middle of work and then things just lie, and you can't do that in investment decisions. You have to stay on top of it all the time. But I don't see why women don't have the confidence to do it. In fact, I think women make very good investment managers because we are by and large sensible. We don't go and splurge on alcohol and cigarettes.
Saris and jewelry sometimes.
Maybe, but that maybe hopefully others buy for us. But the fact is that at the end of the day, rational decisions about when, you know, your kids are at a stage that they have to be educated, you may want to plan for longer term investments there. The desire not to gamble all the money, say, into equities, but to have a balance between debt and equity. I think those rational decisions happen with a discussion, and that discussion and advice can come from a father or a husband or someone who knows about it. And frankly, all fathers and husbands do not know enough about it. Often you have to rely on an investment manager. So I would think women should be sitting there with their husbands or father, whoever's handling it with them, when the investment advisor comes, with a view to understanding what the issues are, taking the decisions.